The day is January 24th, 2023, and the musical act known as Panic at the Disco has just disbanded. I've got to call them a musical act because calling them a band really doesn't fit anymore. Hasn't fit for a while. Me and my brother, both such fans of this act for so long we practically walked around in top hats, have, in recent years, taken to calling them Brendan at the Disco. There stands yet one person, only one entertainer left to carry upon his back the title that once dominated airwaves and Scene Kid t-shirts. Yes, this is the dude that made High Hopes. No, that fact doesn't take away from what is one of the most irresistible and prophetic debut albums ever recorded, A Fever You Can't Sweat Out. Like a coal miner, I'm left stranded in the ruins of a town once prosperous. It's a town where we all thought we'd be able to provide such quality for such a long time. Like the miners near me, I'm starting to get angry. Things were better under President Ross. That yuppie Yuri came into town and all the complexity went away. Lock Butch Walker up. Make Panic great again. Like those surrounding me with poster board, however, I know somewhere deep down in my heart that nothing is ever that simple. The business won't come back. This is a story of complex and unraveling structure that raises beyond the simplicity of emo fanfiction. The town got left behind, endlessly toiling through one fractured moment in time. At least it feels that way now. It didn't in the moment. In fact, the burnout from Fever seemed immediate. It was a record that the band admitted they weren't quite sure how to play once they hit the stage. Bit of a problem, as its lead single, I Write Sins Now Tragedies, was on the mind of millions of people. At certain hours of the day, it was inescapable on MTV. The band was now firmly thrown into the spotlight, poster children for a scene they'd already written songs about not wanting to be the poster children for. There was Wentz and Stump, there was Williams, and now there was Yuri and Ross. Their immediate FU took the form of Pretty Odd, forever destined, perhaps intentionally, to be their Pinkerton. The band pulled a rare maneuver known as an inverse Rivers, where instead of losing credibility and fame from being way too much of a bummer, they simply lost cred for being too optimistic about stuff. They dropped the goddamn exclamation mark for gosh darn sake. This record is largely looked upon as Ryan Ross's baby, even though some of the Yuri co-written tracks are the best on display here. And the band Ryan Ross and John Walker would form after their departure, the Young Veins, traded questions of album-long jaunts into different realms for affirmations of, no, I really do want to sound like Brian Wilson. And that's cool. They were a good band. That was a good album. Yuri and, briefly, Spencer Smith trekked onwards. Vices and Virtues and the non-album fan favorite New Perspective are the closest Yuri, as unquestioned Panicker-in-Chief, would get to recapturing some of the eyeliner-laden glory of Panic's peak. Yuri clearly had more of a mind at this point for continuing with Panic as a meat-and-potatoes power pop act, until all of a sudden he didn't. Smith sadly struggled throughout the band's history to wrangle some demons, leaving Brendan to be the only one on the cover of Too Weird to Live, Too Rare to Die, a downright album that led off with Miss Jackson, an upbeat stomper oozing with the thoughtfulness and sonic palette of a Disney Channel commercial bumper. Just fast forward from there to here. After Ross and Walker leave, Panic gets its exclamation mark back, but a lot of people now feel it shouldn't have. Yuri is the punchline of in-the-know children clamoring for an emo Warped Tour explosion they'll never live through. Ross has become a de facto martyr, everyone throwing themselves at even the slightest reemergence or acknowledgement of Panic's existence. If they got back together today and announced a tour, says the nearly fainting masses, I'd throw my whole checkbook at them. I mean, all of this? For a band that released 2 records nearly 20 years ago now? You'd throw your checkbook at the emo meme Top Hat Man? Really? Because, I mean, I would. Have you ever listened to this goddamn album? A Fever You Can't Sweat Out shouldn't exist in this state. In the year 2023, the prospect of a random band uploading demos and being plucked from a sea of MySpace wannabes by an established name just that impressed with them would result in lit torches and pitchforks shouting, industry plan, or I guess more accurately now, hey man, do you dig Wet Leg? This was a downright quaint idea before the release of this record. It's just so shocking in retrospect that it ended up just as miraculous as the circumstances of its ascent. The opening lyrics of the record that annihilate the fourth wall. the absurdly long song titles that seek to immediately put Fall Out Boy's level of quirkiness to shame. These guys were blisteringly, painfully aware of the eyes that would be on them. Half of this record seems to be getting the sucker punch in on any and all gatekeepers before they've even begun to think about swinging. Any other band at any other time, and this would be one hell of a pretentious, self-aggrandized statement to make after the freaking starting gun. Yet, against all odds, it's this marvelous window into the pressures of being heirs to an alternative throne, being the hot topic, if you will.
Stop stalling, make a name for yourself, or you better put the pen and paper, chime your way out. If you talk, you better walk, you better back your shit up with more than good hooks flying all under the gun.
Ross saw the writing on the wall of the Warped Tour porta potty bathroom. This was just as much about emotion as it was fame, album units, and cold hard cash. They all did, I'm sure. Maybe that's why this record sounds so labored over and meticulously thought out. This is no half-dedicated attempt at selling emotion to teenagers. Every thud of computer-emulated kick drums, every layer of guitar loop kicking down the door of synth pads sounds so right where it should be that it could be attributed to divine intervention. And God knows they sure had their share of fantastic hooks. They're so fantastic on this record that I'd excuse them for whatever they'd be under the gun for. It's beyond baffling to me that a common criticism of Panic on this record was a lack of authenticity. Not only are these lyrics some of the most direct, intelligent, and emotional to ever grace the scene, they're intelligent beyond comprehension compared to some of their contemporaries, and are written with one of the most immediately recognizable tones in recent memory. I guess we just wanted those lyrics to be about giving girls dejected creep stares instead of writing about the pressures of fame, hot sex, and infidelity, and a dramatic flair that arises from the act of socializing as a young adult. It's a damn shame popular music never really liked that stuff, huh?
Boys will be boys, hiding in estrogen and wearing Aubergine dreams.
Just brilliance. Time to Dance is probably one of the best examples of how mystifying it must have been for Joe Schmo music critic to try and qualify these guys back in the day. It's certainly a laborious task. All the auto-tune and thrashing danciness of modern-day hyperpop, all the four-on-the-floor umami of dance punk, all the melodrama of emo. The way you can picture dudes behind arpeggiators banging their head and dancing might seem kinda dated upon first glance, but it's shockingly prophetic. What were we talking about? Oh, yeah, the songwriting. It's some of the best on any pop record of the 21st century. Nails for Breakfast, Tax for Snacks is built upon a pure foundation of hooks. Every single moment of it crafted for pure infiltration. The chorus is just military grade. The fact that this is what was coming on deep cuts out of the gate, it's so absurd.
Can't take the kid from the fight, take the fight from the kid. Sit back, relax again. Have some composure, where is your posture? Oh no, no. Congregation, let's sing it like you mean it, no. Don't you get it now, don't you move.
Same goes for nearly every track here. These are all on an album cruelly thought of for its singles. Think about the last time you've heard any of these and didn't just throw on I Write Sins Not Tragedies to say the goddamn door line with your friends, you poser. Yuri has a God-given talent to turn a few words into an earworm that infects and spreads. Now, he's used this talent for pure, incalculable evil, but here it's used to stuff one album so full of infectious lines that nearly everyone who listens to it could get jealous. Build God, Then We'll Talk is the swan song that this scene deserved. Sure, Fall Out Boy might have deliberately tried to write that one with What a Catch Donnie, but Build God is the true zenith this whole genre could hope to simultaneously experience. One song to instantly define the ways in which the idiosyncrasies of this band, and these kids listening, defy the ways you could attempt to characterize them. What a wonderful caricature of intimacy. It's impenetrably great. Every single bone in my body was urging me to think beyond giving this a 10 out of 10. And every argument was moot. Every fantastic little switch up, every boisterous chorus simply wag a finger and say nuh-uh to anything you could try to throw at it. Run from it. Hide it. Take up arms and attempt to slay it. You can't. A fever you can't sweat out is inevitable. And maybe that's its greatest flaw. It stands as this singular, crowning achievement that dwarfs those that stand near it. It's the Emo Kids Blue album, a record perfectly placed in a time period that didn't know what to do with it, with a structural strength unlike any of the albums that surrounded it. Give it its flowers. come to terms with the fact that no matter how much they might have tried, no band could have matched this. They couldn't have hoped to write this, they still haven't, and they shouldn't try to. We've passed through the event horizon. Without Panic, we may truly find ourselves lost in the realm of mainstream emo-tinged music. Sure, they might not have lived up to any of the ambitions stated on their early material, but Panic's presence alone was enough to remind all the kids that found themselves transitioning from basement shows and notebook poetry that this piece of them existed on their way to their 9-to-5s. We may truly be left in the shoes of our mothers and fathers, spinning our old records on Spotify to try to feel that spark of what once was. This might just be inevitable. Here's a eulogy to a band that, like the scene they immediately loathed being the frontmen for, flamed out. They flamed out into a future that, much like their present, wasn't sure how to handle them. They weren't sure how to handle their past, let alone that present. But god damn it, that spark was so universally beloved and so thoroughly captivating that all we can really try to do is remember how it went again in our heads. Or maybe they'll reunite in like 2 years and all this will be like slightly less relevant. I don't know. Ticketmaster can bite the big one. Peace.